Have you ever experienced that moment where you kneel down to pray? You close your eyes, you try to connect with God, and the only thing you find is an absolute void, a cold silence, as if you were talking to yourself in a locked room. Maybe you were waiting to feel a deep peace, a strong emotion, or what many call that warm glow in your heart, but none of that happened. If you're going through this, if your prayer life feels arid and dry, I need you to listen very carefully. You are not doing anything wrong. In fact, this might be the most decisive and mature moment of your spiritual journey. The problem is that we were raised in a modern culture that has completely flipped the order of things. The world out there tells us constantly to follow our hearts, to do only what gives us pleasure or what moves us emotionally. But the spiritual life, the life of someone who truly seeks God, demands exactly the opposite. The first lesson you need to engrave on your soul is that man is not and cannot be defined by his passions. Placing feelings above reason is a mistake that destroys any chance of depth. The spiritual life requires that what must be done is done, regardless of what you feel in the moment. Think about it with me. If you only went to work when you felt like it, you'd lose your job. If you only took care of your family when you felt emotional about it, your family would fall apart. Why would it be any different with God? Act based on truth, not on ecstasy. If you believe God exists and that He hears your prayer, that is the truth. And if that is true, you must act based on that reality, not worrying about whether you woke up feeling excited or discouraged. Your prayer is valid because it is directed by your reason and your will to connect with the Creator, not by the immediate impression of your senses. Often, this lack of will, this heaviness that stops us from praying, has an ancient and very serious name: acedia. Acedia isn't just laziness, it is a sadness of the soul, a spiritual sickness that prevents us from seeking the things of above. There is a force, the enemy of human nature, that wants to see you paralyzed, stagnant, waiting for some magical motivation that never comes. The cure for acedia is brutally simple: action. To defeat this discouragement, the right attitude is to write down what you need to do and simply do it. The act of doing something productive and disciplined, whether in study, work, or prayer, is the only way to starve these temptations. You need to understand that this weakness comes from a lack of spiritual stamina. And here is a fundamental point: we are not angels. We are creatures composed of body and soul. Your body needs to be used to switch your mind into prayer mode. Do not underestimate the power of posture. Kneeling is fundamental. When you bend your knees, you are telling your body and your psyche that you are small before the greatness of God. This physical act of placing yourself in a posture of humility helps direct your being toward prayer, even if your head is somewhere else. Speaking of your head, there is a secret that the great saints knew: habit and consistency. Prayer is prepared in the small sacrifices of everyday life. You must set a time for your spiritual practice and stick to it religiously. The ideal would be to dedicate an hour of your day to this, but start with what is possible, as long as it is consistent. And here, the golden rule applies: fake it till you make it. This isn't hypocrisy, it's training. You acquire a virtue by acting as if you already had it, until it becomes part of your personality. Discipline is a habit conquered over years, not days. You act with virtue, even without feeling the virtue, and over time, that virtue becomes who you are. But I know that even with discipline, the mind can be chaotic. We live in a culture of distraction, constant noise, infinite notifications. When the mind is scattered, the goal of prayer should be the serene contemplation of order and truth. You need to silence the noise. It is necessary to embrace, even if just for a few minutes, a contemplative life, turning off the noise of vanity. Mental prayer is the high point, where you converse with God and reconnect with the origin of your life. And if you don't know what to say, use the masters. Reading the Bible shouldn't be an academic study in that moment, but a prayerful reading. Read for 5 minutes, stop, and let that word illuminate your intelligence. If your mind is too agitated, turn to the rosary. The rosary is a powerful tool because it occupies the body, and the repetition calms the mind, while your soul is forced to meditate on the mysteries of the life of Christ. It is an experience that mortifies our intellectual pride and places us in the position of simple children. Also, use classic spiritual works like The Imitation of Christ to have material, to have fuel for your meditation when your tank is empty. Now pay attention, because this is the engine that makes all of this work: the sacramental life. It is impossible to maintain a healthy prayer life if the soul is sick. The lack of forgiveness for sins generates an unbearable psychological weight and leads to what we call the spiral of despair. Confession is one of the best means for the health of the soul and the psyche. When you go to confession, you break self-deception because you are forced to verbalize your failures to another person. This purifies, lifts the weight, and brings a lighter, more joyful view of life. And of course, the Eucharist. Being in a state of grace makes all the difference. The Eucharist isn't a symbol, it is the real union with Christ. Your daily prayer should be a preparation for that moment. Without these aids, trying to pray in spiritual dryness is like trying to run a marathon without drinking water. In summary, praying when you feel nothing is perhaps the greatest proof of love you can give to God. It is an act of pure fidelity and willpower.